I think it always comes back to that idea of going, this might not be right, but it definitely appears to be the least wrong answer for the time being. That seems to be something you can become more comfortable with if you lose that 100% of something being correct, but you go, based on the evidence, this appears to be the least wrong.
Absolutely. And the just showing an interest and being curious about like what's actually, how did they do this, what was the research, what else is going on, just digging a little bit deeper, seeing that as a source of joy and wonder rather than seeing it as a source of kind of frustration and hard work. I mean, I know, Robin, this is something you're exploring in your book, just the joy of being interested in the world, in the universe, and wanting to dig deeper and wanting to be curious and wanting to find out more. That's one of the cardinal virtues I'm talking about in my book, being curious, rather than how can I use this to win some argument in the pub or to win some argument on Twitter, to say, this is really interesting. Let me find out more. The joy of learning stuff that you didn't know, the joy of not knowing. It's all out there.
Well, that's what I love. In a few times in the book, you mentioned just about that wonderful, almost Damascene moment of going, do you know what? Proving people wrong can be fun, but finding out actually what is much nearer to being right and what we really is more fun. And I think if you have more people, because that's one of the problems, isn't it? When people are sometimes in arguments, it's not that, the joy of someone being wrong trumps the actual important thing, which is to try and show them the far more interesting story of what is right.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right, we've got loads of questions. There's so much that I wanted to ask you from the book as well, and I'm annoyed that we haven't got around. Well, the people really should buy it because there's so many
Yeah.
fantastic
Several
stories.
copies each, please.
Just the whole thing about the curse of knowledge as well. You talk about Steven Pinker, and there's loads of and the use of hot sauce in psychological experiments, the Milgram stuff. So let's have Jeanette Garwood. Her question is: I'm thinking the differences between scientists and practitioners. Medics are not really scientists, and they do not naturally, on average, see the bigger picture. Now, how fair do you think that is?
Well, and I'm sure there's some truth in it. I think there's a real benefit, though, to having a close connection between practice and research, and that's something that medicine, I think, is really good at. So, when you're learning to be a doctor, you are taught by doctors who are practicing doctors. You might well go to a university hospital. You've got a sort of this hands-on experience, and then you'll join the British Medical Association. You'll subscribe to the British Medical Journal, which will regularly send you summaries of the latest research. Now, if I think about my own field, economics, it's not, when you learn economics, you're not taught by people at the Bank of England or working for investment banks or working at the World Bank or doing cost benefit analysis for Transport for London or that kind of thing. You're taught by academics in their ivory tower. And then once you go off and you do become a practicing economist and you work for a company or something, there's a bit of a disconnect between what you're then doing and what the latest research in economics is. So you can have traditions where research and practice are closely connected, and you can have traditions where they're quite separate. And for me, I would want them to be connected. And I think that's something that medicine does very well, because you've got that thing that we were referring to earlier of this kind of rich, detailed knowledge you're getting from personal experience, and the more refined, thinner, less detailed, but more unbiased, perhaps, knowledge that you're getting from the statistics. When you have both together, then you're really making progress.
I think that fuller picture you talk wonderfully in the book, where you talk about your journey through China, the statistics and then the physical reality from them, but also Dollar Street, that website, which is
Yeah.
fantastic in terms of giving you a picture of a real, well, many real lives.
Yeah, the Dollar Street, it's set up by the folks at Gapminder. So the brains behind it is Anna Rosling Ronlund. And it's just does a really good job of simultaneously showing you some images of what life might be like living in a hut in the Democratic Republic of Congo on less than $1 a day, or living in a suburb of Shenzhen in China on less than $20 a day, or living in Manhattan on $300 a day. And this sense of comparing the different, what's similar, what's different, but also adding all the numbers and showing you how where the numbers the numbers are sort of enhancing this sort of photographic representation that you're getting of these people. So it does a great job of putting together two different types of knowledge, which is not always easy to do.
Now, this is from Dr. Michael Ward. This is about, we just touched on this a little bit at the beginning, the latest Health Secretary. Do you share Michael's horror at the statements recently?
Dr. Michael Ward is the latest Health Secretary. This is
Oh,
new.
no, I'm sorry. Did I? Yes, Dr. Michael Ward is not the latest
Congratulations
Health Secretary,
on the new job.
Though he has, you might be. We just don't know. Things might move fast now. Wondering if you shared his horror at the statements recently made that all precautions can be abandoned after July the 19th. Because all will be well after that date, and that the data doesn't matter.
So, well, let's have a look at what is the data showing us at the moment. And there's good news and bad news. So the bad news is very bad. The bad news is that official case numbers are doubling roughly every 9 or 10 days, and that's, I mean, it's not as bad as it was back in March 2020, where we didn't really know, we didn't really have the data, but we were guessing it was maybe doubling every 2 days or 3 days. So doubling every 9 days is better, but you get to really messy levels of cases very quickly. And they've been doubling every 9 days for a while. I mean, it's been going up and down, but this has been happening since May. It's just a lot of people didn't notice in May because the absolute numbers of cases were very low. But it's not like this is a sudden piece of news. This has been going on for a while. And we keep waiting for vaccination to kind of turn the corner on cases and to get this third wave going down. There's very little sign of it so far. So that's a problem. The good news is lots of people are vaccinated. The vast majority of the most vulnerable people are vaccinated. And the vaccines work really well. They don't work 100%. So the sort of sticky situation that we're in at the moment is the government's basically said, we think we're going to be fine. We think the vaccines will work, but they're really trusting to that. Because, I mean, they've said they won't change their minds. They may well change their minds, but it'll be too late if it turns out the vaccines are not as effective at preventing death as we think. So my mental model for this is if you just let the virus rip, given what we now know about it, with no vaccination, 500,000 people dead in, say, 2 months would be a reasonable guess. Maybe it's 300,000, maybe it's 700,000. I mean, but it's that sort of order of magnitude. It kills about 1% of the population, and everybody's going to get it. So that's your baseline, 500,000 people dead. Then you go, okay, we've got the vaccines. Loads of people have been vaccinated. How good are the vaccines? Well, if they're 90% effective, either because they're not perfect or because not everyone has them, and there's still 50,000 people dead. If they're 98% effective, then now you're down to 10,000 people dead. And I mean, that before May 2020, I would have sounded insane to say that the government and perhaps many people in the country would tolerate 10,000 people dying. But I think probably people would say, okay, that's like flu. That really is like flu. That's bad, but we've got to get on with our lives. But we've got this uncertainty between, maybe it's 50, 60,000, or maybe it's 10,000, or maybe it's less than 10,000. That uncertainty makes me feel very uncomfortable. But I think there is a chance we get away with it. There really is a chance that we get away with it. And I understand people want to get back to normal. People want to, they want to be hugging their grandparents. They want to be doing stand-up comedy gigs. I mean, I really, really want to go and see Robin on stage again. We all want that, yeah.
There's 2 tickets left for the Rondo in Bath this Saturday, so come down. It's on the same motorway. You'll be fine. Excellent.
But yeah, that I think is hence my nervousness, and there is this sort of sense. I think a lot of people who are looking at the data are going, but couldn't we just wait a few more weeks and vaccinate a few more people? We've got a load more mRNA vaccines coming in August, probably. Do we have to really let it rip in mid-July? Can it not wait just a few more weeks? I know we have to live with it, but Could we maybe live with it? Could we sort of give it 4 weeks, 6 weeks more? I don't know. But anyway, the decision's made. We just have to see what happens as nerds, and as citizens. No one is forcing you to take your mask off. No one is forcing you to go to restaurants. No one is forcing you to tongue kiss your grandmother. We can take individual responsibility, and individual responsibility is not going to be the same as collective responsibility. It's not going to be the same as everyone following the same rules, but it's something, so, we've got to all just look around and make the best choices that we can.
Tongue kiss your grandma. That was a particular treat for the Freudians watching, by the way. I mean, I found it interesting because of the last 30 days I've been in isolation for 20 of them. I went and did the Cheltenham Science Festival. I got the beep. That was immediately, work was off again. And then I did one other gig and then got the beep again. So yeah, I think anyone who's got school children, watching the speed that it's been going through schools.
Yeah. My daughter was home from school today. Yeah. And this is the thing. There is this the trouble with politicization of this kind of thing is people tell themselves that the lockdowns are imposed upon them by the government. They're not really. The lockdowns are really imposed upon us by the virus. And even if you look at somewhere like Sweden, where in principle there haven't been lockdowns, actually in practice, a lot of the restrictions, people have self-imposed their own restrictions. People stopped going to work, people stopped going to restaurants, people were working from home, even though they were allowed to do these things, because they were looking around, they're going, well, I don't want to take the risk, I want to control the virus, I want to be a responsible citizen. So, a lot of this is not so much a political decision. It's been imposed upon us by this horrible virus. And when you sort of see it like that, then you start going, well, hang on, it's not like, oh, we just snap our fingers and make the restrictions go away and then we're fine. Because you snap your fingers, you make the restrictions go away and ping, actually no one wants to come to Robin's gig because too many people have the virus. And so even if the gig was perfectly legal, it's not actually happening. You can't sell the tickets and so on. So it's wrong to, I think of this as purely imposed upon us by Whitehall. Mostly it's been imposed upon us by SARS-CoV-2. And we need to sort of keep our focus on the enemy. I know it's easier to hate politicians, but actually this is mostly the virus.
It is a very weird mindset that I've seen. I've seen it again playing out quite volubly today, which seems to be. And then after Freedom Day, then the virus will be gone because we're saying it doesn't exist, and it's an odd. It's like an old Punch cartoon of a ruddy-faced colonel. Well, I refuse to allow the virus into my house, and we seem to. Unfortunately, that does seem to have played out in some people's psychology.
Yeah, so I remember having these arguments on Radio 4, which is never a good idea. But a few weeks before Christmas, and basically just saying, look, like, can we postpone Christmas till Valentine's Day? I want to go and see my dad for Christmas, but I don't want to kill my dad. So maybe we should just all wait a bit. And then being lectured by, I think it was Baroness Ros Altman, saying, "Oh, Tim, you just don't understand. People really like Christmas." I'm like, I like Christmas too. I want Christmas. I want Christmas presents. I want Christmas trees. I want turkey. I want all of it. I don't want people to die. 100,000 people died. And people got together on Christmas Day, in part because the government said it was allowed, and then therefore it was safe. They sort of made that, they'd outsourced the decision making to the government, and actually, just because it was allowed doesn't mean it was a good idea. So anyway.
We have another question from Marcella, who'd like to know if people form their economic expectations based on headlines and outcomes in economics are heavily influenced by what people believe will happen, how can the press avoid creating self-fulfilling prophecies?
Oh, so this is a really interesting question. So it turns out there's this question. So if Robert Peston wanders around, saying, "Oh, looks like there's going to be a recession," does that cause a recession? And it looks like you could probably cause a bank run by saying there's going to be a bank run. But the evidence suggests that if lots of journalists say there's going to be a recession, when the surveyors come around with their questionnaires and say, do you think there's going to be a recession? People say, yes, I think there will be a recession. So it does change expectations. And it turns out it doesn't change behavior. So people are like, oh yeah, I think there's going to be a recession. Evan Davis says there'll be one. Robert Peston says there'll be one. There'll be one. Like, well, are you changing anything about, are you kind of tightening your belt, which could be dangerous? That could provoke a recession. People are like, no, I'm off to the shops. I bought a new car. So it turns out that people's expectations are influenced by the media, but people's behavior not influenced by their expectations as much as you might think.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. I as I mentioned before as well, this is a fantastic book, and I think it's so true that the excitement of actually really. I remember when I started in stand-up, it was so much fun to mock other people, but then when you found that there was another place you could go as well in terms of just fantastic ideas and drawing people in, and I think that book makes those arguments. But it makes 10 very strong arguments. I was just going to. I've realised the book I was going to mention is under my computer. I've been using it as my table, but I was just going to mention this because this is a conversation which I'm having next week on How to Academy, which is with Sarah Gilbert and Catherine Green, vaxxers, all about the AstraZeneca vaccination. So I was just going to mention that.
Excellent.
Tim,
local girls, we're very proud of them here in Oxford.
And and it's such. I mean, again, that's an interesting the different ways. We haven't. I think we had a minute left. We don't. Tim, thank you so much for joining us today. And I'm back, I think, on Sunday with Brian Greene, whose book Until the End of the World is my favourite of his books, one of my favourite science books of the last couple of years. I hope you all have a lovely evening.